Okay, I've started recording. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Sonia Chernos. I'm with ProLiteracy New Readers Press. I want to thank everyone for participating in today's webinar. I hope you and your families and your colleagues and your students are all staying healthy and safe during this crisis. And I want to thank Drew Robinson and Vinod Lobo for being presenting this webinar for us to learn more about how to use learning during this time and help students continue to learn with distance learning. So with that said, I'd like to turn it over to Drew to go ahead and get started.
This is Vinod Lobo here. I will do the initial introductions. So
Okay.
thanks so much, Sonia. I am the founder and CEO of Learning Upgrade, and I'm joined by Drew Robinson, who's our sales director. And we also have Victoria Neff and Jen Vinek from World Education. So they will be coming on a little bit later to describe the options that all of you have for communicating with your students remotely. But why are we here? We are here because remote learning used to be something supplementary, something optional, something that you did with your classes or tutoring programs as an extra that they could do from home. In other words, frosting on the cake. And now remote learning is the cake. In other words, we have to rapidly get our learners onboarded and then learning reading, math, ESL, GED, HiSET prep from home with you tracking. Everything has to be done with you and your students at home. We already have the answer for this, which is that students have smartphones, they have mobile skills, and we've been onboarding students remotely, for about 4 years now since the X-Prize competition. So we already have the tools to make this happen. But now, of course, everything is remote. We can't start with an onboarding party. So the key is, how do we get started with you and your learners remote? Drew Robinson is going to help you get that started. So I'm going to turn it over to Drew.
All right, thank you, Vinod. And so, the core today that we want to cover is using Learning Upgrade as a tool for your new reality, and that's remote learning. This wasn't something that you had time to transition into. It wasn't something where somebody told you a few months ago, okay, let's get the ducks in order. In 3 months, you're going to have to teach remotely. For a lot of you, this was something you found out in a week, maybe even a day. I remember last week, there were some school districts that on Thursday or Friday said, okay, on Monday, nobody's coming into school. So this is new for a lot of you, and it's going to be a transition. But like Vinod said, this is something that we've been doing for a long time now. Our platform is ready for it, and this is our bread and butter. And that's remote learning with student self-enrollment that allows instructors to also monitor their classes remotely and motivate learners. So to get into things, a lot of you, from the emails that we sent out and from our registration list, have some experience with Learning Upgrade. So I don't want to dive too much into the Learning Upgrade platform. I really want to focus today on setting up your class for remote learning. But for those of you that are new, I want to cover the Learning Upgrade app, and that's what your students are going to be using. And then also the Learning Upgrade LMS, the Learning Management System. And that's what you as an instructor or as an admin will be logging into from your home. And you'll be able to monitor your entire class, track progress, see who's doing well, see who's struggling, print certificates, and everything else that's needed to monitor a remote class. So for those of you that have never heard of Learning Upgrade before, the Learning Upgrade app for students is 21 courses with 960 lessons. We cover reading, writing, and math from basic to diploma, aligned to CCRS, Common Core standards. And what makes us unique is that we teach all of this using songs, video, and games. So bullet point at the bottom there, you can learn anywhere, and that's really critical. And so this is where we've had experience for a long time. Our core was blended learning, where you have Learning Upgrade in the classroom, and then a lot of activity taking place at home. So now we're moving away from that to where almost all of our learning is going to be taking place at home. Then the final point is having that continuous assessment and the reports available as an instructor and admin so that my learners aren't just working on a workbook at home, Hey, I might not be able to see them next week, next month. I can send them home with a workbook, but if I have no way to see how they're doing in real time, it's not going to be very useful. So let's get into Learning Upgrade for students. This is what the app's going to look like when your learners first launch the app. You'll see our English, you'll see our math, then we have our skill courses, reading, comprehension, pre-algebra, GED, and HiSET. Also an exciting time, we're moving into this new reality of remote learning. And our newest course, which is going to be launching next month, is going to be digital literacy. So that'll be another skill-based course, that digital literacy, to teach those fundamentals that maybe some of your learners don't have. So everybody with a Learning Upgrade license, everybody with a Learning Upgrade pilot will have access to that new course as well. Taking a look at the existing screen here, this is, you'll see that term at the top, that binge learning. And so this is something we came up with, when we were the grand prize winners for the Adult Literacy X Prize. We always thought that having a smartphone app would give us an opportunity to have a few extra hours around your classroom time. And what we really started to see is that it wasn't, just exclusively used there, but one of the highest areas of activity that we saw on our timeline was in that 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. And that was a time that, as somebody that provides education software for learners and also talking to our instructors and our admins, it's a time we never had with students. That was always off limits. And so now, we're not just coming with, a fully featured, aligned to standards, 960 lesson app for your learners, but we're also an app that can compete for their attention. And that's something that's really difficult in the remote setting for your learners. They have social media, they have video games, they have TV, and we want to keep them focused. We want to keep them dialed in and engaged. And so it all starts with the design of our app. You'll see all the courses laid out here, so the learners can see which course they're enrolled in, but also to see their goals, where I'm headed. And this is laid out for anybody that uses Instagram, just like your stories. At the top of your feed, you'll see those circular icons for stories. You swipe through them, you click on them, and you know that content is coming behind that click. And so you'll see that there. And then the other key here is you can also work on multiple subjects. And that's something a lot of instructors need, is they don't want to have to use 10 different programs to teach 10 different things. You want to be able to have an app that can do English and math. But if you're working in multiple grade levels, you also want your learners to be able to start at their level. This is really important in all of our adult ed settings. This is important if you're working with students with special academic needs, for them to be able to start at the level of their ability. So when we click on a course, now we're going to see the lessons map. So every single Learning Upgrade course has 60 lessons. You see them laid out here. 60, that's the only timed one. That's the final challenge. That's going to be a cumulative test of everything they learned on 1 through 59. This here, you're seeing the course map for English Upgrade 5. And so the way it works is, let's say I enroll myself in English Upgrade 5. I start out on lesson 1, and in order to move from one lesson to the next, I'm going to start on that one. I'm going to get the instruction. That instruction comes in the form of an animated instructional packet. There's a song. And then after I receive the instruction, then I answer questions. I have my practice questions. So you have the practice questions. You need to get 75% or better in order to move on to lesson 2. If you get 75% to 89, you'll get a bronze. If you get 90 to 94, you'll get a silver. And then if you get 95 to 100, you'll get a gold. You'll see that every single lesson here is completed at gold. And at the bottom left, they've earned a gold certificate. So if they finish all 60 lessons, let's say you have a few bronze left, a voice is going to come on and say, okay, now repeat those bronze lessons and move them up to silver. They repeat it to silver. Then they have the option, we're going to automatically enroll them into the next course. And that's important, again, for that binge learning. Just like when you get to the end of your episode on Netflix or you get to the end of your episode on Amazon, what's key for retention is you have to automatically start the next episode. Even if you told yourself you're only staying up till midnight, when you see that you're about to do Rite of Passage 5, you want to just see what the instruction's all about and if you can pass it. And so that's really key for us, in that classroom time, to keep our learners engaged. But also, again, this is remote. You might be giving assignments to make sure that when our learners do get on the app to complete those assignments, that we're keeping them locked in. So for those of you that are interested, we say we have 21 courses, 960 lessons. A lot of our instructors, okay, well, what does that mean? Do you have a lesson list? Where can I see these? And absolutely. So you can go to learningupgrade.com, and in the main menu, you'll see where it says courses. You can just click on courses. We'll also make this link available in the chat, and it's also available in this slide deck that we'll be sharing. So when you click on courses, you'll see the content blocks. For an example, this is math. You have math K-8. And at the very bottom of the screen, you'll see math lesson list. So if you click on math lesson list, you're going to get every single math course with all 60 lessons in a table. So this is great for those instructors that want to assign specific lessons to their learners. Say, hey, I want you to work on multiplication facts. And you say, okay, well, that's Math Upgrade 5, 10 through 13, and your learners can work there. We also have tables for alignments if you want to have, see how our courses match up to the CASAS, TABE, and CCRS standards. And then we also have alignments for Common Core and CCRS. So if you have a standard in mind, you can see which lessons map up there. So as I mentioned, learner engagement is really what makes Learning Upgrade special. And this becomes, even more important with a remote classroom setting. So you'll see on the left, this is what the instruction will look like. Let's say you're working on quadratic formula. It's really difficult to grasp some of these concepts in a workbook, or just in maybe like a dry Khan Academy style video. You need to be able to visualize this formula, see where everything's coming from. So you have the instruction, and this is for every single lesson that we do, all 960. And then you're going to have the practice, and that's what you're seeing on the right. And this is volume of a rectangular prism for an example. Again, this is something that really, you need an app, you need something live to be able to visualize this when you don't have a teacher there to help you with it. If you have a teacher with the workbook, a teacher can draw a three-dimensional object on the board. They can talk you through the formula. They can show you where things are. But let's step back and say, okay, we don't understand this, and now we're going to try to learn it in a book or just a piece of paper. It just doesn't work. So as a learner, I'm able to log in and I'm able to complete these lessons, and you'll see what happens here when you get it incorrect. A voice is going to come on. It's going to tell you that it's incorrect, but then it's going to tell you how you can do things the correct way. We're going to show you the formula. And most importantly, we're going to show you where those numbers that we use in the answer are coming from. So we're actually teaching you how to answer these questions correctly, not just telling you that you answered them incorrectly. And Learning Upgrade is available everywhere. So your learners will be able to have a username and password that they can use on multiple devices. When they self-enroll, they'll use one device. Let's say they're on their a smartphone that they share in the family. But if that smartphone is being used by a sibling, they can log in on their Chromebook with that same username and password, pick up right where they left off, and you'll be able to track all of that as an instructor. So now, Learning Upgrade for teachers. I usually have a long slide deck for this in presentations, but for remote learning, I think it's much more beneficial to do this live. And so I'm going to be showing you a live demo of this. But to set things up, I want to take a look at our 4-step plan. So the first step in our 4-step plan is teacher training. That's what we're covering today. And for those of you that have already filled out the form to get your free pilot, your remote learning pilot, you've already received the Getting Started email guide from me. And that has a lot of instruction in it as well that I'll be covering live today. So in this teacher training, step 1, that's where we unpack steps 2, 3, and 4. So the very first thing you want to think about is student onboarding. And this is, the most critical step for a remote classroom. We want to make sure that we get our self-enrollment class code into the hands of our learners so that they can create their accounts and start making progress. So for step number 2, that's student self-enrollment, what does that look like? So everybody that currently has a Learning Upgrade license, you'll be able to do this with no problem at all. You already have your teacher account, and I can show you soon how to get your learners enrolled. For those of you that don't currently have a Learning Upgrade license, make sure you go to learningupgrade.com, and the very first thing you're going to see is our remote learning plan. You can click on Learn More, and you'll see this page here. And as you can see in this slide, for example, it says Free Pilot Sign Up. Make sure you click that Free Pilot Sign Up. you'll fill out that form, and we'll be getting you a pilot to get your class started. We'll also be sharing a link to that page in the chat. I think Vinod already shared it. And that's, yeah, learningupgrade.com remote learning. And then you'll just click on free pilot. And when you click on that, you'll be able to fill out the form, and I'll be able to help get your class set up to do what I'm going to show you here in the training. So after you fill out the form, those of you that have already done this, I think we're approaching 70 already, but you'll get an email like this from me, and it'll say, you know, we have approved your pilot. You can request as many students as you need. Just let me know. And then that first content block, you're going to see it says student self-enrollment. So in student self-enrollment, we provide you with a class code, but the key thing you want to focus in on is that first link. It says class code sheet. So when you click on class code sheet, you're going to get your own personalized Learning Upgrade self-enrollment guide. Every single teacher has their own. At the very top, you can also toggle languages, so you can print this off in Spanish as well. But what you want to focus on is this 7-digit code. So anybody, as I mentioned before we had this webinar, some were asking if they needed the Learning Upgrade app downloaded. Not required, but anybody that does have it downloaded, I'd like to just go through a mock student onboarding so you see how simple it is. So when you have this guide, you'll be able to open it up in your email, and you have some options. So number one is to do a screen grab. So if you're opening this up on a mobile device, a phone or tablet, just take a screenshot on your phone. You'll get an image of this entire guide. You can text it, you can email it, you can use WhatsApp groups, Google Classroom, Class Dojo, Blackboard. You have a nice simple image that you can share with your entire class. Your learners will be able to follow the steps, download the app, launch the app, plug in the class code, and they'll be good to go. So with this guide, this is really what you want to focus on. So number one option is to do a screenshot, take an image of it. Second is there's a print button at the top. So obviously remote classroom, we don't want to print this, but with computers, you can also save as a PDF in that print menu. So if you save it as a PDF, again, then you have those options to share it out with your entire class. So once you've opened up your email, you've clicked on your class code sheet. Now I've shared it out with my class. I have a group of 50 learners that are ready to get started. So now all they need to do is follow the instructions. So they download the app, they launch it. The very first thing they do is they click on Get Started. Then they're going to take the English or math track. They can start on either one, and they can always add additional courses later. So in this instance, I'm going to click on Math. So now I have three options. I can start from the beginning, Math Upgrade K. I can take a placement test, and that's where Learning Upgrade will assess me as a learner and enroll me in the appropriate class. Or I can directly enroll in any of these courses by clicking on them. So if I want to start on algebra, I click on algebra. If I want to click on Math 6, I click on Math 6, or I can just start in GED. So after I've selected my course, this is going to be the most important screen. So now I get to enter my first name and my last name. You'll see here we have the Learning Upgrade mascot, Vowel Owl. The student ID, email, and phone is voluntary. You as an instructor can request that your learners enter something in there. So when you're sharing that class code sheet out, you can ask them to do that if you don't have access to those already, or if you'd like to keep track of them that way. The most important field is class code. They absolutely have to enter the class code into that field. So again, let's go back and take a look at it one more time. Class code on my guide, 4701260. Now in the app as a learner, I'm self-enrolling, and I'm going to plug this 7-digit code in. For any of you that have questions, you're saying, okay, this is great. I have my enrollment guide. I'm following. It's really easy to get started, but how do I share this with my students? Jen and Victoria from WorldEd, they're going to be sharing tools to help you do that at the end of this webinar. So yeah, at the end of this webinar, Jen and Victoria will be able to give you some great tools to help with that. So after you've created your account here, you have your first name, last name, and class code. Now we're going to show you your username, password, and school ID. And with this, you can now log in on any device. Now you go to the courses screen, you're on GED, and again, you can click on any grayed out icon to then go ahead and start. So that's the entire onboarding phase. Now, for step number 3 in our guide here is motivating and tracking learners. So to show you how to motivate and track learners, I'm going to stop my share of the slides here, and we're going to move now to a live demo. And so for the live demo, what I want to show you is what things are going to look like when you're logging into your account. So I have it pulled up here, and what you're going to see is the teacher menu. But to start, let's go to the email. This is really critical. So everybody that signed up, again, there's already almost 70 of you that have this email, and it's all the instructions that we're covering in this live demo today. So the first thing we covered was student self-enrollment. Here's that link for the class code sheet. It also has links to the App Store, so you can download on iOS, Android, and then also open on the web. You can just copy that line for your learners if they're having trouble finding it in the App Store, and that'll give them direct links. So for step number 3, which is monitoring and tracking our learners, we're going to move down to tracking class and student activity, this block of your email. So first thing is signing in. You'll see that as an instructor, you have your username, password, and school ID. You can just click on this login. It'll take you to the login screen. You'll plug that in. And when you log in, you're going to see what we call the teacher menu. So in the teacher menu, we have 5 blue tabs. So thank you, Caprice. It looks like Caprice and Vinod went through that self-enrollment phase with me, and you'll see they're already here. So they're already showing up in my class. And this is exactly what it would look like when you do that student self-enrollment for your students. They automatically populate into your class, and you can see them showing up in real time. You get to see which courses they're in, and you'll get to see as soon as they've completed that process. So obviously there's no content that's been created here. It's just an account, no lessons completed, nothing to view. So I also have a demo account for remote reports. And so this is where I'm going to populate a list of students that have completed a lot of activity so that you know what it looks like as an instructor when your learners start completing things. So the first thing that I have in the email, step number 2, quick reports and accounts, is in the students tab. So with the instructions in the email, you're always going to see we start out with the tabs. I let you know which tab it's in. So we have 5 tabs: students, courses, classes, teachers, and reports. So when I say tabs, that's what I'm referring to. So in the students tab, click on the student monitor. So this is for most of our instructors, this is where you're going to spend a lot of time. You can launch this student monitor. You'll see I have 105 courses loading here. And this is going to give me a live look of how all my students are doing. So now you'll see all of them populate, and you have some options. You can do a level sort. You can also do a name sort, but it gives you some options on how you want to view these. I like to do level sort just to see highest activity. But what you want to focus on in the student monitor is, number 1, we'll have the abbreviations for courses. So you'll see English 2, English 4, comprehension. The M is for math. None are showing here, but it'll be M and then the number. And then, as I mentioned in the slides, every single course has 60 lessons. So you'll see 1 to 60. And then each one of these tiles represents a lesson. So you can hover over a lesson and get the name. You'll see here, this is types of books. The score was 76 with 1 attempt. And you can hover over any of these to see how your learners are doing. What you want to keep an eye out for is if you see red. That's when a learner didn't get 75% or better. That means they have to repeat that lesson again. So I just like to hover over red. Final challenge, you'll see this one was attempted 8 times. Learners struggling maybe with the time portion of that. I can go to English 3, tried it 1 time with a score of 50, 1 time with a score of 71. What you want to keep an eye out for is if you see red on a course and it's a low score with multiple attempts, that's an opportunity in your remote setting to call, text, or email that learner. And then you can work with them maybe one-on-one. You can meet with them in a Zoom meeting or Google Classrooms, however you're connecting, and work through that lesson that they might be struggling with. So here it's sentences A to I. I'll show you in a little bit. You have a teacher whiteboard, and that's an unlocked version of all 960 lessons. So you can log in, see what's going on in the lesson, and then also view the reports to make sure that you can help and support that learner. So that's number 1, is look at red. Number 2 is if you just see a learner that's far behind visually. So you'll know, in your remote classrooms, We don't know how long this is going to be. This could be 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 3 months. We don't know. As things get going, we want to make sure that all of our learners are keeping pace. So if we see a situation like this where, our learners are completing entire courses, and then there's a few that haven't made any progress, or their progress is, maybe 4 or 5 lessons, we know they're not getting their work done. So again, that's another opportunity to reach out. The final thing I'll mention is that celebrating student success. You'll see these toggles here. You can click for inactive, started, stuff completed today, and then also has certificates. So if you click on has certificates, you can see all the learners that have completed an entire learning upgrade course. You can click on these and print the certificates off. So we'll go back to this, the teacher menu now. And the second thing is in the students tab, click on the print passwords. So this is when your learners create their own account and you go into your student monitor and they haven't completed much activity. So you reach out via text and they say, I forgot my username and password that the app showed me. That's okay. You can just click on print passwords here. And in print passwords, we're going to show you the username, password, and school ID. You can copy and paste. You can take a screenshot and share that with the learner that forgot. Number 3 is we're going to look at the individualized course reports. And so this is going to be important again. If you're in the student monitor and you see a learner that's made good progress, but they're struggling and you want to learn a little bit more, first we were in the students. And again, first thing I mentioned is in the courses tab. So now we're in the courses tab. So we click on courses and you'll see that every single one of these courses has a report button. So if I want to see how my learners are doing, I can just scroll down to any one of these. You'll see every single one has an option to view reports. And so for this one here, let's look at English 3. We can pull up this report. And what we'll see here is you're going to get some aggregate data. So average is really high, 99.82. We'll get our average scores and we'll get to see what our initial score was. So you can see for these subject areas, maybe where they need a little work, where they've made growth. This learner obviously has gotten everything to 100%. So you can see they started out and did really well for listening, 98, moved up to 100. Whereas on language and grammar, they started out at 88. So they made a lot more progress there. This learner obviously has a gold certificate, nothing we need to do. But let's say they weren't doing so well. We can scroll down a little further. And now we're going to see this graph. What you want to focus on in the graph is if you see valleys that haven't been filled in. So this learner's done a great job. They've, filled in all the areas they were struggling with. The blue lines, there's the initial scores, and then the orange, that's the high score. So you'll see here when we hover over for nouns, irregular, they started out with a 74. They didn't pass, but they were able to work that up to 100. Here for quotations, dialogue, started out with a 68. So you can see the lessons that they struggled on and then worked up. If you have a learner that's just struggling and not working up, you'll also be able to identify those trouble areas just by quickly viewing the valleys that haven't been filled in. You won't see any orange. It'll still be white on the graph. You can hover over and see those lessons. And then to get more information, we can scroll down to this table. And in the table, what you want to focus on is times played and minutes played. Most of these are 1 or 2, no problem. What you want to keep an eye out, if you see 4 or 5, higher than that. So something like this, 4 times for idioms, non-literal, 53 minutes spent. And so that's high, but an hour for a course lesson you're struggling on is okay. This one here was a little more, so 90 minutes. And so just keep an eye out when you're eyeballing this table, times played and minutes played. So now let's go back to the teacher menu. And again, I keep referring to the email because I do provide all of this in text in the email. I just want to show you live what it looks like so you know where to click and are more familiar with the interface. So now in the Courses tab, we can also view the edit buttons. So in the Courses tab, the first thing I showed you is individual reports. But let's say, I want a learner to move ahead. They're on lesson 5 and I want them to work on a different lesson within the course. You can always click the edit button here. So on English 3, the student's on lesson 1, I'll click edit. Now I can type in 25, update, and now that learner's on lesson 25. So if let's say I looked at that lesson list that I shared earlier, and lesson 25 is where I really want them to begin, as an instructor, you have the option to place them at any point within the course. Now, if English 3 just isn't difficult enough and you actually want them on English 4, but they enrolled themselves in 3, again, you can click on Add Course and then go to English 4, Enroll. So now I'm in English 4, and then I don't want them to have access to English 3. I can just remove that. So for little things like that, the Courses tab is where you're going to be able to do that. Again, you have individual reports. Edit is to move a student ahead, and then you can also remove courses. So now back to the Students tab. Here I've already showed you the Student Monitor. I've showed you print passwords. You can also edit a student account, and this is different than a course. You edit a course, you're changing the lesson. You edit a student, that's their username, password information. So we won't be doing much of that. Most of your learners will enter their first name, last name, then they'll get their username and password. This is a way for you to view that. So back to the email now. The final thing is in the Students tab. Each student will have an edit button, and here you can change usernames and passwords. So that's it for the quick reports. Now, the in-depth reports. I just want to show you two. So now what we're going to do is go to the Reports tab. So here we have in the Reports tab, the Student Progress Report by date. So here we're in the Reports tab, and the very first one under these custom reports is Student Progress Report by date. So in Student Progress Report by date, what you'll see is a start and an end date. And so for those of you in a remote classroom, this is important. If you just want to look at the last weekend, the last week, you can set that time frame to pull data from whatever parameter you're interested in. And then you'll see each one of your student courses displayed similar to the Students tab, but with tallies for all of their time on task activity. So if you just want to view something a little more condensed, you have options. So if you just want to do English totals, let's say your learners have completed 4 or 5 English apiece, you can do math totals. And one I like is all by student. If I do all by student, now I'm going to sum up all of their activity. Even if they did 3 math, 3 English, they'll just show on one row, and I'll be able to see how much time they spent. You can click on any one of these headers and sort. So here I'm sorting by hours played. So I can see that last played. Again, for remote classrooms, this is huge. You can just quickly eyeball, say, hey, what's the date today? Whoa, 3 of my students haven't logged in a week. I got to get in touch with them, send them an email, make sure they're completing lessons. Maybe they forgot their password. Okay, I'll look that up and send it to them. So the Student Progress Report by date's a great way to see a lot of that time on task activity. If you want to dive in a little deeper, you'll see that all of these hours played are links. So you can click on that, and what you're going to see is in the time frame that you set, we'll show you a session report. So you'll get to see every login. So you see their start time and their end time, how much time they spent in that session, the course they were working on, the score, the lesson, and then most importantly, the device. So you can see if they're working on a smartphone, we'll tell you Android, we'll tell you if it's iOS, Linux for Chrome, but you'll be able to see those devices and see which learners are completing time in the time that you've set. So if you have a classroom where, it's a dedicated class time, say, hey, I want all my learners on Learning Upgrade from 12 o'clock to 4 o'clock, you can look at that session report, make sure that everybody's actually working in that time frame. If it's more freeform, you're just saying, hey, I want you to be working on this, completing a few lessons a day, then that'll just give you a good idea of when you can contact your learners. So you say, hey, they're working on it from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. There's a ton of activity. Then I can, they're probably on their smartphone at that time. So if I want to send them a text, that might be a good time to do it. So the second thing here in the in-depth reports is the student time report by date. So in the student time report by date, again, that's in the reports tab as well. We'll click on that, and now you're going to get that session data for your entire class. So not just for an individual student. And just like our previous report, you can set a start and an end date, and you'll get subtotals. So we can see for our learners here, Android, iOS, Android. Looks like this is all exclusively Android and iOS. For your learners that are also working on laptops, desktops, Chromebooks, that'll show here as well. And it gives you a good idea of when that time is taking place. As I mentioned, you can set this to a day, and then you can set a start time and an end time with your time zone. And then we'll pull all the activity if you really want your learners working in a set hour block throughout the day. will give you the tools to make sure that you can see that all of your learners are working in that time that you've set aside. And so that's everything I wanted to show you in the tracking class and student activity. The final thing that I'll cover here from your getting started email is access for additional teachers. So a lot of the requests that I've received so far are from individual teachers, a few from admins, directors, principals. And so you have some options if you want to have additional teachers at your site use it. Because obviously here, this is a class code just for your class. You don't want to be sharing this with other teachers. Otherwise, their students will be logging into your class and filling your reports. So if you have teachers, colleagues that would also like to use this at your existing site, they have two options. Number one, they can go to learningupgrade.com to this remote learning page. When they click on free pilot, in the pilot info, they can just let us know your name, your site, and that they're joining. That's the easiest way. I'll be generating everything and sending them an email. The other way is to click this new user page, and then they'll be creating their account themselves. So on new user, you'll see our new user page. There's a 7-digit teacher enrollment code that we have in your email. They'll use this 7-digit code and then click submit, and then they can start right away with no waiting. And so in that case, they're not going to get this full email, but they can still follow all the steps. And all they need to do is when they log into their teacher account, click on self-enroll. And when you click self-enroll, you get this same self-enroll guide. So again, for any of you, maybe if you remembered your login but can't find the email, you can always quickly view that student self-enrollment sheet again. It's linked to in the email, but it's also available when you're here in the teacher menu with self-enroll. And then the final thing is teacher whiteboard. I automatically add these to all of our remote classrooms. You don't have to do this on your own. When you log into your remote class pilot that you've already asked for, first thing you're going to see when you log in is this is preloaded. When you click on this, you get an unlocked version of everything we offer, all 21 courses, 960 lessons. You can play just the song, just the game. So if you want to do some whole class lessons, let's say you have Google Classroom or you're doing a Zoom webinar like this with 30 students, you can share your screen just like I do. You can play the instruction, and then you can do a whole class lesson with their students. So that's an option as well. Or if you just want to take a look at some of the things that we offer, then that's another good use for the teacher whiteboard. Final thing is classes. If you want to create additional classes to organize your students, that's where you would do it. You can name it anything and then just click create, go back, and then go through the same steps that we went through. And so that's everything that I wanted to cover in this live demo. I just wanted to make sure I covered everything that we have here in the email. All of you are receiving the steps, but now you can also view it live. Go back to this recording if you want to see where I clicked and what to use each report for. You will now have the option to do so. So now I'm going to hand things over to Jen and Victoria, and they're going to introduce you to some tools and some options for how you can move forward in this remote classroom setting. There's nobody better, and so I'm going to hand it off to you guys now.
Great, thanks so much, Drew. So my name is Jen Vanek. I'm Director of Digital Learning at the EdTech Center at WorldEd, and I'm here with me today is Victoria Ness, who is the Assistant Director of the EdTech Center. At the EdTech Center, we provide technical assistance and professional development to programs like yours to help adult ESL and basic skills practitioners use technology to extend and enhance learning. We also do a lot of field testing of products and support research on issues like digital literacy, distance and blended learning, and technology integration. So what we're going to cover here today is an experience from a research project and support of National Immigration Forum, where we helped them set up completely remote onboarding for their learners. So I'm going to turn it over to Victoria right now to share with you the work.
Great, thanks, Jen. It's great to be here. I'm excited to share our learnings and best practices from our work. And just to give you a bit of context on the project that I'll be presenting on, we supported the National Immigration Forum on a program called Skills and Opportunity for the New American Workforce, which was a contextualized English language learning program for immigrant service workers that had a limited English language proficiency. So 60% of the course was completed through self-paced online learning modules, and then the other 40% was remote instruction through a virtual conferencing tool, which is the image that you see on the screen here. So great. So what we learned with our remote onboarding, one of our effective strategies was this idea of proactive support. So rather than responding to questions or issues that students had, that learners had, we kind of flipped that model and really focused on providing proactive tech support. So what that looked like is before classes started, before the program started, collecting learner contact information, specifically their phone numbers, and reaching out to them. You know, hi Maria, this is your teacher Claudia. Just wanted to make sure that you downloaded the app. Did you have any trouble? Hi Maria, this is Claudia, your teacher. Did you download the learning app? Let me know if you had any trouble. And so that we found was really effective because it first off kind of built this rapport with the learner, and also we were able to catch any issues that came up before the course started. So that strategy was really effective. And, you know, building off of what Drew presented on, using login data or progress data to inform initial outreach strategies is a really great approach. We had teachers look at the login data from their students early on and see, oh, okay, Maria hasn't logged in. Let me reach out to her and see if she had any trouble downloading the app or accessing the learning platform. You know, another thing that we saw specific to the virtual classroom was peer-to-peer tech support. So in some classes, learners that were very comfortable with technology were helping other learners, oftentimes in their first language. So, you know, just to give you guys some ideas of these different models that we've seen. Another thing that is a great practice and important is the resources that you create to support remote onboarding. And what we've found to be important is, you know, very simple instructions with clear guidance, and to the extent that you can keep things as, you know, short as possible. So think an image, you know, 3 steps, 1, 2, 3. If it's a video or a screencast, try to make it less than a minute if possible. So making those really quick, focused resources really supported effective onboarding. And I'll give some examples of what those looked like for the work that we did with the National Immigration Forum. Another thing that I'll just add is it's important to be clear about any of the technical requirements in advance. So, you know, will students need an email account? What, if, for example, Drew presented on the student self-enrollment process. So with the code, you know, what do you need in advance in order to access the learning platform? And being clear about that before the course starts or before the program starts. So some examples of the resources that were created for the National Immigration Forums project, you know, these step-by-step instructions, which were sent via text message. As you can see, it's very simple, 3 steps to success: choose microphone, mute, unmute. We also created short videos that were sent via text as well. And And we're also included on the site, on the learner's dashboard. So having those in 2 places we found to be really effective. And this is an example in the class of, again, like reinforced messaging. That's another great strategy to, text more than once or call more than once to share information. But we also in the class had slides that presented, the key steps that students needed to take in order to access the platform. So that's an example of another slide. The screen that you see here is the slide that was presented in the virtual classroom.
Victoria?
Yes.
There's a question about how you can accomplish this remote onboarding with low or limited literacy, and in the first or second language. And so I wonder if you have any anecdotes or from your work with National Immigration Forum on what the language level of the participants in this remote onboarding was and how they handled it.
Right. So definitely very, very limited English language proficiency. And the National Immigration Forum did have staff that were able to call and do outreach, again, this proactive outreach before the course started to kind of provide one-on-one remote support to them prior to the course starting. So that was one way that they were able to successfully onboard students to the platform. And all of it was done by phone. So, we did develop these videos and, step-by-step instructions, but all of that was done through text messaging and by calls.
There's another question here. How did the remote support look like? What did the remote support look like? And did the staff give instructions on the phone only? Maybe you could just dive a little bit more deeply into what the videos and the text messages had.
Right. So these are great questions. I think, prior to, I would say like the week before the course started and 1 week after the course, there was a lot of time devoted to the support. But then after that initial, let's say like 1 week before, 1 week after period, students were very comfortable with the platform and, were able to help each other when they were joining synchronously. In terms of the messaging, I think those really short tutorials and the videos were very helpful for students. And if, when the tech support, when the program staff called, they were able to assess whether or not the learner needed more support, whether that was navigating the platform or whether that was, so there was some sort of like system constraint or, it was an internet problem. So, but having those initial outreach calls really identified like the learners that, were all set, had everything they needed, were able to start the class, no problems. And then the other learners that maybe had trouble accessing the app or navigating the app, knowing where to find things. So having that, knowing that, and then, talking through those issues with the students through the phone.
Yeah. So there's been a request to just gloss over those example slides one more time.
Oh yeah, definitely. So
again, these are the text messages, and what would the spacing of these text messages look like, Victoria, as the teachers are sending them out?
So the first one was login. So the students had to be able to log in to their learning platform is essentially a learning management system like, Moodle or Blackboard, whatever learning management system your program may use. So the first outreach was download the Moodle app, and I don't have those step-by-step instructions here, but they look very similar. So, first step to getting to your class, download the Moodle app or access Moodle from your browser. Type this code in, type this URL in, or find this app on the App Store, and then the National Immigration Forum handled all of their account information and gave them their set them up, called them, and gave them their login info, and that was all done through text. And then once they were in the platform, National Immigration Forum was able to go into the learning management system and see who had logged in and who had not. And then that informed their outreach strategy, as well as they called all the learners and just, developed that communication line with them to say, hey, were you able to download the app successfully? Did you have any questions? Were you able to log in and see your online learning modules? So all of that was kind of spaced out. So the first thing was logging in. The second thing was, were you able to navigate the platform successfully? Did you have any questions? And there was a video that we developed around that as well. That's this video here. This is the first part of it, which goes through the logging into the platform. And there's a second video on navigating the platform, a third video on logging into the virtual conferencing tool, and a fourth video on navigating the features of the platform.
Mm-hmm. So there's another question about use of students' home languages. Did National Immigration Forum use that strategy, or were these students with low literacy in English able to get through the text messages in English?
The National Immigration Forum had staff that could speak, for example, Spanish or Portuguese, so they were able to use their staff to contact those students who were having trouble understanding the instructions, or having trouble reading the instructions because they were in English. I believe that they did create some guidance in other languages. You can see here the welcome slide to the class has several different languages. So I know that they did create some onboarding resources that were in a different language. The videos were not, they were in English.
Great. Well, the questions have slowed down. Any last questions while we're still on this topic? Has anything come in through the Q&A?
Looks like that's been cleared. So the Q&A and the chat is cleared. So thank you so much.
Great. Well, so I've chatted the link to the reports on that National Immigration Forum work that the EdTech Center did. And the technology section of that report, which Victoria co-authored, walks through some of these steps. So if you feel like you didn't quite catch it, you can actually read it in the National Immigration Forum report. And this other link that I just chatted is a link to a brand new web resource that we put together over the last few days. Victoria, since you're sharing, why don't you just, I don't know if you have it up, or you can release sharing and I can pull it up. But we worked very hard since last Thursday to get a web resource together for programs like you, who are maybe in the situation of needing to either upscale or start a distance education program from scratch. So we've taken our expertise. I've been doing this kind of work for over a decade and conducting research, doing teacher education, working with IDEAL Consortium member states. IDEAL Consortium is a group of leaders from many adult basic education programs across the country. And so the research I've done with them and through the adult literacy community, literacy communities competition for X Prize, we've learned a lot. And I've written a series of briefs that are linked on this page that walk you through the very beginning. First, here we have Ready, Set, Go. Those are some very early steps you need to take. We've curated resources along the way, along with stuff that we know to be free and places where you can link to free stuff. And then down in the bottom here, we have these implementation areas where we provide what we understand to be effective practice around recruitment, screening, and orientation, instructional issues, and assessment. So our site is more about how to use these tools, building on the great work of developers like Vinod and Drew and Learning Upgrade. So we hope that this site helps you make use of those tools in an actual program perspective. So that's what we have to offer. We can maybe go back to the slides. Victoria can show our email addresses, and we can continue to answer questions. Yes, so do go to the site. If you have questions for us, you can reach us here. There are underscores underneath, in between our names. So it's Victoria_Neff, Jen_Vanek. We would love to figure out how to help you out with this work too.
All right, thank you so much, Victoria and Jen. I'm just going to share one last screen here. And what I wanted to close with is, that final step in our 4-step guide, and that's that student success. And so, we're getting a few questions, how do we motivate? And so, that's always something that we try to take part in. So, we have what we call the Learning Upgrade Challenge with Pro Literacy. And so with Pro Literacy, we have rewards for top programs, top instructors, students who complete the most hours, lessons, and certificates, and then also prizes for the best personal impact story. So we'll be sending an email out to everybody that would like to join this challenge. Doesn't cost anything, doesn't require anything. Essentially, your activity will just go on to the Pro Literacy Learning Upgrade Challenge leaderboard. It's a quarterly challenge, so the first one ends pretty soon. But then starting on April 1st, that's when the new one starts. So everybody with a remote classroom, if you'd like to have some additional motivation for your site, your learners, then it'd be a great option to jump in on this and have an opportunity to win some of those prizes. And so, also as part, we work really closely with Pro Literacy and New Readers Press. And so for all of you throughout the United States, we'll be connecting you with your New Readers Press rep. And so the one thing I want to focus on is I had some questions on funding. So, also with Pro Literacy, we have the Mobile Learning Fund. And so for those of you, at the end of this, we're donating it for free to all of you programs till the end of June, so June 30. After that, those of you that don't have funding from your site can apply to this Mobile Learning Fund. And it's just like that fantastic book fund that they have at Pro Literacy, where you're able to tap into funds that have been donated to buy books for your program. This new Mobile Learning Fund, you can tap into that to get, programs like Learning Upgrade paid for at your site. So keep that in mind. And again, we're going to be sharing, links via email on the Pro Literacy Learning Upgrade Challenge, as well as the Mobile Learning Fund. And then also for those of you in adult ed, connecting you with your New Readers Press rep that'll be able to answer additional questions, help with onboarding, and really help you get started here in this new remote learning setting. So I appreciate everybody joining today. It is time to end here, but we will stick around to answer questions. So if any of you want to ask more questions in the chat or the Q&A feature, feel free to stick around and ask those. We'll be here. And if you have any, additional things that pop up later, you can reach out to us Again, from Learning Upgrade, Vinod, CEO, and then I'm Drew. And so you can reach us at info@learningupgrade.com. Also call us 800-998-8864 or reach us at our website, learningupgrade.com. You'll have that, main remote learning at the top. Make sure you check that out, subscribe for a pilot, and get started. We'll do everything we can to help out and get you started as quickly as possible. Make sure that this new endeavor is a successful one for you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you
Thanks, everyone.
to Drew and to Jen and to Victoria for this presentation today. And thank you, everyone, for attending. Vinod, did you have any final?
No, I just want to thank everyone for being part of this. This is an overall first time that a lot of you are doing this. And so thank you for taking a chance, going out on a limb, getting your learners enrolled. We're just happy to have all of you part of this community. We're all learning together.
Thank you, Vinod.
Thanks for having us, Vinod and Sonia.
Thanks,
Good luck, everyone.
Thank you.